This video is for education and entertainment purposes only. Please consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health plan.
Hey beautiful soul, it's Jacqueline here from the Labia Chronicles, where I discuss all things lichen sclerosus. So if you have lichen sclerosus and are looking to empower yourself with information, find acceptance, and reclaim your life, then please subscribe to this channel and keep on watching. And if you have a friend or family member with lichen sclerosus and you want to learn more about LS so that you can better support them in their journey, then please subscribe to this channel and please share my content with them as well. All right, so in this video, we are going to be addressing a question that I hear very often, which is, how soon can I expect to see results from my steroids? Now, this is a question that so many of us had. I know that I had it in the beginning when I was first diagnosed. I had no idea what to expect with respect to, kind of how lichen sclerosus progresses, when I can start to see results from my medication, all of that I didn't really know. And, a lot of us just want to know, when can I expect to, get some relief from the itch? When is the pain going to stop? When are things going to get better? So these are super fair and super valid questions to have. And that's going to be the topic of this video today. Just a reminder before I jump into this video that I do offer one-on-one lichen sclerosus peer support calls. You can book a call with me by going to my website, lostlabia.com/support call. And you can learn all about the support calls there and how to book and all of that over there. It can be a really nice resource if you're newly diagnosed, or if you've been diagnosed for a while, but you're really looking for some kind of individualized support and guidance in a way that's kind of not rushed, because I do offer 30 or 60-minute sessions to make sure that you really have the time to share your story and ask what you want to ask, and ask follow-up questions and all of that. So I will also leave that linked in the description box below. And as always, if you find the information in this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up. It just basically tells YouTube that you find my content helpful, and YouTube will show it to more folks, which is amazing because, we want to increase awareness for lichen sclerosus. All right, so let's jump into it. All right, so before we address the actual question of this video, I do want to talk really briefly about topical corticosteroids, what they are and how they work. Now, I do, of course, have a more in-depth video that discusses steroids and how they work and their risks and all of that. So if you're interested in that after this video, you can check it out. We'll leave a card up here, and I will also leave it linked in the description box below. So ultra-potent topical corticosteroids, such as clobetasol, halobetasol, they are considered to be gold standard when it comes to LS treatment. What this means is that the majority of healthcare providers across the globe are going to prescribe ultra-potent topical corticosteroids to folks with LS, as the first thing that they're going to try is that medication. And now the reason that so many doctors have that as their go-to first kind of line of treatment is because to date, we are, I never remember the day. Well, we're October 20 something at the time that I'm filming this, 2022. So at this point in time, topical corticosteroids by far and large have the most evidence behind them, supporting their ability to reduce inflammation, slow the progression of the disease, and get folks into remission. Now, of course, there are more treatments being studied at the time that I recorded this, but the data isn't fully out there yet, so I can't speak to whether they will turn out to be more effective or less effective than topical corticosteroids. But right now, that's kind of where the science and the medical community is. So that's why they are most commonly prescribed for folks with lichen sclerosus. Now, how topical corticosteroids work is they basically reduce local inflammation by suppressing this local kind of immune response. So here's my little vulva puppet that I love bringing in from the body agency. So I want to just be clear that when we talk about inflammation and kind of immune reactions, that it's local, right? So what's going on, and I do have a whole video on what lichen sclerosus is and all of that good stuff. So I highly recommend checking that video out. Again, link that in the description box below. But basically, in a nutshell, again, really briefly, what goes on is with lichen sclerosus, we get this super inflammatory response. And that happens because there's local immune system kind of dysfunction in a sense. So the body recognizes a protein in the basement layer of the vulvar skin and says, hey, we don't recognize this protein. And when the body doesn't recognize something, it goes on the attack. It goes on the defensive. It wants to get rid of that foreign invader to keep the body safe and healthy. But sometimes those invaders aren't actually invaders. So the body kind of gets tricked and thinks that it's a foe instead of a friend. And because it sees this invader in here, this local immune system kind of revs up and causes this massive inflammatory response to try and kill off that protein to keep you safe. But again, that protein is actually not a foe, it's not an enemy, it's not a problem. So what we need to do to calm all of that inflammation down is we need to say to this immune response, we need to say, hey, you need to settle down. We need to calm you down. We need to take the volume and bring it down so that you can be back to normal. Because right now, this immune response is on overdrive, right? So we want to settle that. We settle the inflammation. And when you settle the inflammation, you settle a lot of your symptoms, and a lot of these signs will slow and eventually, hopefully, stop, right? So that's kind of in a nutshell how they work. Again, you can check out that video on topical corticosteroids for more information. But again, at the time that I'm filming this, topical corticosteroids are the gold standard and are unmatched when it comes to any other treatment in their ability to reduce the inflammation. So that's a really, really, really big piece of managing lichen sclerosus and getting it into remission is that inflammation piece. You need a treatment plan that is able to reduce those high levels of inflammation. Okay, now you might be thinking, cool, I have my steroid, I've been using my steroid, but I still have symptoms. When can I expect to, feel relief? When can I expect to be better? Great questions. Now, the truth is the answer to this question is a little bit complicated, and it can depend on a few factors, but I'm going to highlight three main factors that can impact your progress with respect to seeing results and feeling less and less symptoms and getting into remission. So the three main factors that I'm going to discuss are 1, the severity of your case of lichen sclerosus, 2, proper and consistent use of your medication, and finally 3, other factors such as stress. So I'm going to talk through all three of those. So let's start with the severity of your case. Now, lichen sclerosus is a very individualized disease. What does that mean? Well, that means that if you have lichen sclerosus and I have lichen sclerosus and our friend has lichen sclerosus, we might all have different signs and symptoms. So for example, one person can be asymptomatic, but maybe they have, clinical signs like thickened white patches of skin. Somebody else might have chronic, really, really intense itching. Some folks don't have any itching at all, and they just experience chronic tearing with sex. Some experience burning. Some experience a lot of architectural changes, but no symptoms, and everything and anything in between, right? And so if I feel my symptoms at like a level 2, somebody else can feel them at a level 6. So it can really vary. Now, how severe your case is something that can be determined by your healthcare provider, and they would determine this by, taking their clinical picture, which basically just means how you present physically in their office, how your vulva looks. So they're looking for active signs of disease to make that decision, as well as what symptoms you have. And from these bits of information, they can kind of determine if you have a more severe case or if your case is more mild, so on and so forth. So again, that's something that would be determined by your healthcare provider. And then obviously the severity of your case will impact how quickly you see results. Because imagine you have a very, very, very severe case. It is unlikely that they're going to see results in the same way that someone with a super mild case would, right? So the person with a super mild case might see results a lot quicker than someone who is more severe. So they both have, both of those individuals can get into remission. It's just that one person's journey might take a little bit longer because of the severity of their case. So that is the first point. All right, the second factor that can impact how quickly you see improvement with your medication, how quickly you see results, depends on you properly and consistently using your medication. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's start with consistency. Consistency is, your ability to consistently apply your medication according to your treatment plan. For example, if your treatment plan right now means that you are supposed to be applying your medication every other day, it means that you apply it every other day to the best of your ability. Same thing, if your treatment plan is applying it once or twice a week, then you consistently apply it once or twice a week. If you're not sure about your treatment plan, that is definitely a conversation you should be having with your healthcare provider. And in the interim, I do have a video where I discuss how often you should be applying your medication, and I review some general protocols. And then at the end, I have a bunch of really important caveats. So I definitely encourage folks to watch that video to the end because there's a lot of very important information there. But the main kind of moral, I guess, is use your medication consistently. And you don't stop using your medication just because you start to feel better or because you don't have symptoms. So if you've been following me for a while, you're probably quite familiar with my story. But if you're new here, first of all, hi, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. So I've been in remission for over 2.5 years at the time that I'm recording this, which is October 2022. So I've been in remission for over 2.5 years, and in those 2.5 years, I haven't experienced symptoms. All of the symptoms that I used to experience, like pain with sex and tearing and fissures and burning and itch, I haven't had those in 2.5 years. So a lot of people tell me, well, hey, if you don't have any symptoms, I guess you don't use steroids, right? And I tell them, oh no, I definitely use my steroids. I use my steroids on a maintenance protocol, which for me means 2 times a week. And I do that consistently every week. I do my Monday and my Thursday nights. I do my treatment. And the reason for that is because steroids aren't a cure. They are very effective at reducing inflammation and, getting the disease into remission, but they're not a cure. So what that means is if I stop my medication, then the disease can continue to progress. Even if I don't have symptoms, I might not realize it, but it can silently progress sometimes. And that is really, important. And that's why at the time that I'm recording, most of the medical community will encourage you to use your medication for life on a maintenance protocol. And if you're not comfortable using a steroid for that length of time, then you might want to discuss with your doctor what kind of other treatment options you have. For example, you could see if you wanted to try a calcineurin inhibitor. I also do discuss calcineurin inhibitors in my steroid video. So again, that will be linked in the description box below if you wanted to check that out. But again, moral of the story here, be consistent with your use and follow your treatment plan. Then the second piece to this is, of course, applying your medication properly, right? This is really important with respect to seeing results. Now, if you are looking for information on how to apply your medication properly, I highly encourage you to check out, if you haven't already, but I'm sure you have, the oh so famous Lichen Sclerosus podcast. Kathy did an incredible interview with Dr. Jill Krapf. And in that interview, Dr. Krapf explains how to use your medication properly, which includes, or ideally includes taking a bath or a shower for 15 to 20 minutes beforehand, using a pea-sized amount of medication and really rubbing that medication into the affected area, which for a lot of us is the vulva, for approximately 60 to 90 seconds But you can learn all of the details and all of the good stuff on how to apply properly by going to the description box below and checking that interview out. So again, consistency and properly applying your medication will have an impact on how soon you see results with your medication. The third factor that can impact how soon you see results from your medication is other factors like stress. Stress is honestly such a big thing for lichen sclerosus. So anecdotally, in my experience and speaking to people on support calls, being in, as many support groups as I can and actively engaging in those support groups and just really being involved in the LS community, one trend that emerges time and time again is that stress is kind of the number one trigger for people's lichen sclerosus. And if your body is highly stressed and your nervous system is on overdrive, it makes healing a lot harder. Now, I talk about the importance of stress reduction a lot on TLLC, and I actually did do a workshop in June and July of 2022 on the topic of stress and lichen sclerosus and the vagus nerve. The feedback on that was really good, and a lot of folks were saying like, I really wanted to go, but the times just didn't work for me. I had to bring my kids to school then, or I was on vacation then, or for whatever reason they weren't, or time zones was a big thing. So I decided, okay, I polled my audience on Instagram and I said, would you be interested if I made this workshop into a webinar so that you don't have to worry about time zones or anything like that? And the response was an overwhelming yes, please make that. So if you are struggling with stress and LS, this is definitely something that I highly recommend you check out. I will leave that link to the workshop in the webinar, I should say, in the description box below. But you can go to losslabia.com/stress webinar. And in that webinar, the first portion is kind of educational and science-based. So I talk about the nervous system, how the different nervous systems work, the impact that stress can have on the nervous system and the body. And then I move into a whole section where I explain the multiple ways that lichen sclerosus can be affected by stress. And trust me, there are a lot of ways that lichen sclerosus can be affected by stress, probably ways you didn't even imagine. So I go through all of that, and then I talk about the vagus nerve and how you can stimulate this nerve to help calm the nervous system and reduce stress. So I give a lot of practical tips and advice. So you can watch that. You can watch that as many times as you want. So definitely give that a go if you struggle with stress and stress management. All right, so now officially to the question, how long can you expect to see results from your medication? When can you expect some darn relief from the itch and the pain and all of the misery that comes sometimes with lichen sclerosus? So I'm going to answer this question in two ways. I'm going to start by answering it from what does the medical literature say, and then I'm going to share my own personal experience to kind of, just give two different answers and two different angles to the question, even though my answer actually very much aligns with the scientific literature. So in the literature, when we talk about seeing results, it's normally, kind of understood as either a really big improvement or the patient gets into remission. Most studies are looking for when does the patient kind of get into remission. And that window is actually quite big. It's anywhere from 3 to 6 months to a whole 12 months, so a year, right? So if you are using your steroid and it's been like a couple of weeks or even a couple of months and you are kind of not seeing a big improvement, I encourage you to stick with your treatment plan, to continue using it, because honestly, it can take some time for things to really calm down, for things to settle, for you to find relief, and then for you to get into remission. Now again, that's 3 to 6, up to a whole year to really get there. So that's what the medical literature says. All right, so I'm now going to answer the question from a less scientific, well, it's not scientific, from a non-scientific perspective, which is from my lived experience. So I'm going to kind of share, what my progress looked like. So I have to say that when my doctor prescribed me clobetasol, she just said, apply it daily. And that was kind of it. So I wasn't given any kind of information about what to expect with respect to my treatment, with respect to how the disease progresses, with respect to anything medication-wise. I was really not left with much information at all. So when I filled my prescription, I kind of thought like, all right, finally I'm going to get some relief. I thought that it was going to be like taking penicillin for strep throat. So when you get strep throat, you take penicillin or some kind of antibiotic and you feel improvement fast. Like at least I always have. Like normally if I had an infection and I took an antibiotic, by like the second day I would start to feel much better, third day quite better, and then like that was kind of it, right? And then you finish your course of antibiotics and you are completely fine. And I expected that response to be just as rapid for my vulva. I kind of saw my vulva as the throat and the penicillin as the clobetasol. I expected really, really quick results. And so I didn't have realistic expectations about progress and, improvement. And I think that was really unfortunate because that was really hard on my mental health because it made it almost harder for me to process when I wasn't getting better as quickly as I thought I would. I started to spiral thinking, this is all my fault. What am I doing wrong? I started to question every aspect of myself, everything that I did. It was like, well, was it because of this? Was it because I drank too much water, too little? Like I would overanalyze everything. And all of this is because I didn't have realistic expectations. I didn't know that for most folks, it's anywhere from 3 to 12 months. Otherwise, I might not have beat myself up mentally so hard in those first few weeks, but you only know what you know. And back then I did not know much. So anyways, despite this, I continued to use my medication because I was under the impression that, there's nothing else. And so I just kept using it, hoping that I would see relief. And I must say that looking back, I started to see some difference around the third month. I started to feel a little bit better, like not dramatically better, but like just, a tiny bit. Let's say my pain and my itch and my discomfort were at a level 8. I think it dropped to like a level 7 or 6 by the third month. Then by the 6th month, I started to feel a lot better. Not perfect, right? Like I still had some symptoms, but they were mild at this point. So if I was at an 8, I probably got to like a 3 or a 2 at that point. So that's where I was. There was a big improvement in my symptoms and consequently in the quality of my life, right? My mental health was better. I was able to do more things again. I kind of felt like, all right, I can live my life again at 6 months. And then at 9 months was when I got into remission. And ever since then, I have not had any symptoms. So I almost took a full year to get into remission, 9 months to get into remission. So again, everybody's journey will be different, but honestly, it's so important to kind of just stick with your medication, assuming that your medication is not giving you a bad reaction. Now, if you're having a bad reaction to your medication, then obviously that means, you should be going and having a discussion with your healthcare provider to see if they can put you on a different treatment. But in my case, I wasn't having a bad reaction to it. I just wasn't seeing results as quickly as I thought. And then another important point to note here is that when we talk about how soon you see results and what that kind of progress journey is going to look like, it's not going to be a perfectly linear progression, right? So for me, like the way I just presented it there made it seem like I was like at a level 3, like at a level 8, pain and itch. And then, by month 3, I started feeling a little bit better. By month 6, much, much better. And then at like month 9, I was like, yay, perfect. But that line, that beautiful, clear line, that would not be an accurate description or representation of how my progress looked. In actuality, it was a lot messier. It was not a clear line at all. There were ups and downs and rocky patches. And there were moments where I was starting to think like, okay, all right, I think the medication is working. I think I'm finally starting to get somewhere. And then a few days later, I would feel worse. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And then I would feel worse for a little bit, and then it would start to improve. And then, so I think the point that I want to really emphasize here is that Progress can take time, and progress for most people is not going to be linear, and that sucks, and that's not fun, but it is not indicative of there being no progress. It's not indicative of you doing anything wrong, and it's not necessarily indicative that your medication isn't working, although it could be. And again, that's why it's important to have a good conversation with your healthcare provider with respect to kind of how you are improving. But I did just want to give you my personal timeline and a bit of my personal experience again to just kind of help set realistic expectations for you, so that you don't get discouraged if you're not better in a few weeks or even a couple months for that matter. So that is it for this video. To recap, the scientific literature will say approximately 3 to 6 to 12 months to start really seeing big improvements and get into remission. That very much aligns with my personal journey, where it took me 9 months to get into remission, 6 months to start feeling a significant difference. So definitely please drop any questions and comments in the comment section below. And that is it for this one. I will catch you in the next one.